The morning sun filtered through the observation dome of the Stellar Gateway Station, casting long shadows across the polished metal floor. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the viewport, her coffee growing cold in her hands as she watched the massive dragon vessel approach. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. Scales that shimmered like liquid starlight, wings that seemed to ripple through space itself, and a presence that made even the largest human warships look like toys. "They're requesting permission to dock," Lieutenant Marcus reported from his station, his voice tight with barely controlled anxiety. Sarah set down her coffee and straightened her uniform. "Grant it. And Marcus, tell our security teams to stand down. Whatever happens next, we meet them with open hands, not weapons." The lieutenant hesitated. "Commander, protocol requires—" "I know what protocol requires," Sarah interrupted gently. "But this is humanity's first contact with the Drakari Empire. We have one chance to make the right impression. Fear won't serve us now." 3 hours later, Sarah stood in the station's main reception hall, watching as the airlock cycled open. The Drakari ambassador emerged, and Sarah felt her breath catch. He was enormous, easily 4 meters tall when standing upright, with scales that gleamed deep emerald in the artificial light. His eyes were golden, ancient, and currently fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to step back. She didn't. Instead, she bowed, just as the diplomatic briefings had suggested. "Ambassador Cairneth, welcome to Stellar Gateway Station. I am Commander Sarah Chen." The dragon's massive head tilted slightly. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder, but his words were clear. "Commander Chen, your species intrigues us. You are young, fragile, yet you have spread across the stars with remarkable speed." He paused, and Sarah couldn't tell if that was admiration or criticism in his tone. "The Galactic Council debates your application for membership. I am here to observe and report my findings." Sarah had known this, of course. The Galactic Council controlled access to the faster-than-light trade routes, the medical technologies that could cure diseases humanity still struggled with, and the protection networks that kept the more aggressive species in check. Without council membership, humanity would remain isolated, struggling, always one step behind. "We're honored by your presence," Sarah said carefully. "We've prepared quarters for you and your staff. If there's anything you need—" "A tour," Cairneth interrupted. "I wish to see how your kind lives, works, exists, not your prepared presentations or diplomatic facades. Show me the truth of humanity." Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness. The truth of humanity? They had planned for formal meetings, carefully staged demonstrations of human achievement, but raw, unfiltered human life? That could go in any direction. "Of course," she said, making the decision in an instant. "Where would you like to start?" Cairneth's golden eyes gleamed. "Surprise me." Sarah led him through the station's residential section, where families lived and worked. Children played in the recreation areas, their laughter echoing through the corridors. Cairneth watched them with an expression Sarah couldn't read. His massive frame seemed too large for the human-scaled hallways, yet he moved with surprising grace. They passed the medical bay, where Dr. James Okoye was treating a young girl who had broken her arm in the zero-gravity gymnasium. Cairneth paused, watching as the doctor spoke gently to the frightened child, distracting her with stories while he set the bone. "Your medical technology is primitive," Cairneth observed. "This child suffers pain that could be prevented." "Yes," Sarah admitted. "We know the council has better methods. That's one reason we seek membership. Yet your healer tends her with such care," Cairneth continued, something shifting in his tone, as if she were precious beyond measure. "She is," Sarah said simply. "They all are." They moved on to the engineering section, where Chief Engineer Rodriguez was arguing loudly with her team about the best way to repair a malfunctioning air recycler. The discussion was heated, passionate, full of competing ideas and strong opinions. Sarah winced internally, but Cairneth seemed fascinated. "Your kind argues so freely," he said. "In my experience, lesser species show more deference to authority." Sarah bristled slightly at lesser species, but kept her voice even. "We believe good ideas can come from anyone. Rank doesn't equal wisdom." "Interesting," Cairneth murmured. The final stop was the station's garden dome, where volunteers maintained crops and decorative plants from Earth. An elderly woman named Mrs. Yamamoto was teaching a group of teenagers how to properly care for the tomato plants. She moved slowly, her hands gnarled with age, but her voice was warm and patient. Karnath watched for a long moment. Why does an elder perform manual labor? Surely you have machines for this task. We do, Sarah agreed. But Mrs. Yamamoto says working with living things keeps her young, and the kids learn patience, responsibility. It's about more than growing food. The Dragon Ambassador was silent as they returned to the reception hall. Sarah couldn't tell if the tour had helped or hurt humanity's case. She had gambled, showing him unpolished reality instead of practiced perfection. Finally, Karnath spoke. I have seen many species petition the council. Most try to impress with military strength or technological achievement. You showed me children, healers, engineers who argue, and elders who teach. His golden eyes fixed on her. Why? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Because that's who we really are. If the council judges us, they should judge the truth. For the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed Karnath's scaled features. Tomorrow, we continue. I wish to see more. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the reception hall to find Karnath already waiting. The massive dragon stood by the viewport, watching the stars with an expression of deep thought. He turned as she approached, and Sarah noticed something different in his posture, less formal, perhaps slightly more relaxed. Good morning, Ambassador, she greeted him. I've prepared several options for today's observations. We have a school, a research laboratory, our Justice and Mediation Center. The school, Karnath said immediately. I wish to understand how you shape your young. Sarah felt her nervousness return. Children were unpredictable, honest to a fault. They wouldn't hide their fear of a 4-meter-tall dragon, wouldn't pretend politeness they didn't feel. But she had committed to showing truth, so she nodded and led the way. The school occupied an entire section of the station's educational wing. Teacher Maria Santos met them at the entrance, her eyes widening slightly at Karnath's size, but her smile remained warm. Commander Chen, Ambassador, the children are very excited to meet you. They know I'm coming? Karnath asked, surprise evident in his rumbling voice. Of course, Maria said. We don't lie to children. They know you're deciding if humanity joins the Galactic Council. They've prepared questions. They entered a classroom where 20 children aged 8 to 10 sat in a circle on the floor. Sarah held her breath, waiting for screams or tears. Instead, a small boy with dark curly hair jumped to his feet. Wow, you're really big. Can you breathe fire? He asked excitedly. Karnath blinked, clearly taken off guard. Yes, I can. Though I rarely do so aboard space stations. The fire suppression systems become alarmed. The children giggled. A girl with red braids raised her hand. Do you have kids? What are baby dragons like? I have 3 offspring, Karnath said slowly, lowering himself to a sitting position so he was closer to the children's level. They hatched from eggs and were quite troublesome. They tried to fly before their wings were strong enough, and constantly got into places they shouldn't. Like my little brother, another child said. And the class erupted in laughter and agreement about annoying younger siblings. Sarah watched in amazement as Karnath spent the next hour answering questions. The children wanted to know everything: what he ate, whether space was scary, if dragons had pets, whether he ever got lonely. Karnath answered each question with growing warmth, and when a tiny girl nervously asked if she could touch his scales, he extended his massive forearm gently. They're warm, she exclaimed. I thought they'd be cold like a lizard. We are not lizards, Karnath said, but his tone was amused rather than offended. We are warm-blooded, like your kind. Before they left, the children presented Karnath with drawings they had made, pictures of dragons and humans together, playing, exploring space, being friends. Sarah saw something flicker across the ambassador's face as he carefully accepted each drawing, treating them as precious gifts. I will keep these, he told the children solemnly. They will remind me of this day. Their next stop was the station's community kitchen, where volunteers prepared meals for families struggling with financial difficulties. A man named Thomas ran the operation. his movements efficient as he coordinated a team of workers who chopped vegetables, stirred pots, and packaged meals. "Why do they work without payment?" Karnath asked, watching the busy kitchen. "Because their neighbors need help," Thomas answered, overhearing the question. "My daughter was sick 2 years ago. Couldn't work, couldn't pay for food. The community fed us for 6 months. Now I'm back on my feet, so I help others." "A debt system," Karnath said thoughtfully. "Not really," Thomas corrected gently. "I don't owe these specific people anything, but someone helped me when I needed it. Now I help whoever needs it. That's just how communities work." Karnath was quiet as they watched the kitchen operate. Sarah noticed him observing small moments, a teenager carefully packing meals for an elderly neighbor, workers laughing together as they cleaned, someone setting aside the best portions for families with young children. In the afternoon, Sarah took Karnath to the station's memorial garden. It was a quiet space with walls displaying names and photos of people who had died, explorers lost in space, workers killed in accidents, those who had simply reached the end of long lives. "You honor your dead," Karnath observed. "We remember them," Sarah said softly. "Their sacrifices, their love, their contributions. Death is hard for us. We're fragile. Our lives are short, and we lose people constantly. But we carry them with us through memory." Karnath studied the walls for a long time. The Drakari live for thousands of years. We rarely experience loss. Perhaps we have forgotten the value of memory. An old man sat on a bench before one photo, his head bowed. Karnath approached slowly. "You grieve," he said gently. "My wife," the man said, not looking up. 50 years together, gone 3 months now. I come here every day to talk to her." "Does it help?" Karnath asked. "Some days yes, some days no," the man admitted. "But I won't stop coming. She deserves to be remembered, talked to, loved, even now." Karnath sat beside him, his massive form somehow seeming smaller, gentler. They sat in silence together, a dragon and a grieving human, sharing a moment of quiet understanding. As evening fell, Sarah walked Karnath back to his quarters. "You've seen much today," she said. "What do you think?" The dragon ambassador paused at his door. "I think," he said slowly, "that I am beginning to understand something the council may have overlooked. Your kind's weakness may also be your greatest strength." "I don't understand," Sarah admitted. "Tomorrow," Karnath said. "Ask me again tomorrow, when I have seen more." The third day began differently. Karnath arrived at Sarah's office before she had even finished her morning coffee, his golden eyes bright with purpose. "I have a request," he said without preamble. "I wish to see your kind under pressure. Not prepared scenarios, but real challenges. How do humans respond when things go wrong?" Sarah felt a chill of worry. "Ambassador, I can't exactly arrange a crisis." An alarm blared through the station, cutting her off. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Sarah's communication device erupted with urgent messages. She grabbed it, listening intently, her face growing pale. "What is it?" Karnath demanded. "Mining accident," Sarah said, already moving toward the door. "Section 7, tunnel collapse, 12 workers trapped. Oxygen limited. You wanted to see us under pressure? Come on." They ran through the corridors, Karnath's massive form somehow keeping pace with Sarah's sprint. The emergency response center was already buzzing with activity when they arrived. Chief Engineer Rodriguez stood at the main display, coordinating rescue efforts. "Status," Sarah barked. "Unstable tunnel. Partial collapse blocking main access," Rodriguez reported. "We're drilling through from above, but it's slow. They have maybe 4 hours of air, and that's if nobody panics." "Can we reach them faster from another angle?" Sarah asked. "Yes, but it's dangerous. Old maintenance shaft, structural integrity, questionable. Could collapse completely if we put people in there." "Do it anyway," Sarah ordered. "Assemble a rescue team. Volunteers only." Rodriguez nodded and made the announcement. Sarah expected maybe a handful of volunteers. Instead, nearly 40 people stepped forward immediately. Engineers, medical staff, maintenance workers, more people than they could possibly use. Karnath watched silently as Sarah selected the smallest team that could do the job effectively. Those not chosen looked disappointed, eager to help despite the danger. They compete to risk death? Karneth asked quietly. They compete to save their friends, Sarah corrected. The rescue team entered the maintenance shaft, while everyone watched the monitors tensely. The shaft was narrow, dark, filled with debris. The team moved carefully, testing each step, communicating constantly. Progress was painfully slow. In the emergency center, Dr. Okoye set up a medical station, preparing for casualties. Mrs. Yamamoto from the garden appeared with thermoses of hot soup and coffee. They'll be cold and scared when they come out, she explained simply. Warm food helps. 30 minutes into the rescue, disaster struck. The shaft trembled, and ceiling panels began to fall. On the monitors, Sarah watched the rescue team scramble for safety as dust filled the air. Team leader, report, she demanded into the communicator. Coughing came through the speaker. We're okay, Commander, but the path forward is blocked now. We can't reach the trapped workers this way. The room fell silent. Sarah's mind raced, calculating options, alternatives, possibilities. They were running out of time. Commander, a young engineer named Chen Li spoke up hesitantly. There's one more route, through the water recycling tunnels. They're even smaller, barely enough room for one person at a time, and they're partially flooded, but I think I can fit. Alone? Rodriguez protested. That's suicide. You'll have no backup, no support. I'm the smallest person here, Chen Li insisted, and I know those tunnels better than anyone. I helped install them. Sarah wanted to say no, wanted to refuse to send this young man alone into danger. But 12 people would die if they didn't try, and time was running out. Go, she said finally, but you maintain constant communication. Any sign of trouble, you retreat immediately. That's an order. Chen Li nodded and disappeared into the access tunnels. Everyone watched his progress on a small camera attached to his helmet. The tunnels were tight, claustrophobic, water dripping from the ceiling and pooling on the floor. Several times he had to squeeze through gaps so narrow Sarah couldn't imagine how he breathed. Karneth stood beside her, watching intently. Why does he do this? He risks everything for people he may not even know personally. Because they're human, Sarah said simply. Because if he doesn't try, he'll never forgive himself. Because that's what we do. Chen Li's breathing came hard through the communicator as he crawled through the flooded sections, pulled himself over obstacles, navigated by touch in the darkness. After 40 agonizing minutes, his voice crackled through. I see them. I'm through. Everyone's alive. Cheers erupted in the emergency center. But the celebration was brief. They still had to get 13 people out through that impossible route. Chen Li, Sarah said. Can you guide them back the way you came? Negative, Commander. Too narrow for some of them, and several are injured. But I can attach safety lines and help widen the original rescue route from this side. If the team can restart their approach, we can meet in the middle. It took another 2 hours of careful, dangerous work. The rescue team advanced slowly from one side while Chen Li and the trapped miners worked from the other. Twice more, sections threatened to collapse. Once, a miner panicked, and Sarah heard Chen Li's voice through the communicator, steady and calm, talking the man through his fear. Finally, the two groups met. One by one, the trapped miners were brought to safety. Exhausted, dirty, some injured, but all alive. The last person to emerge was Chen Li himself, barely able to stand, his hands raw and bleeding from moving debris. Dr. Okoye immediately began treating the injured. Mrs. Yamamoto pressed hot soup into trembling hands. The volunteers who hadn't been chosen for the rescue team now helped carry stretchers, brought blankets, offered comfort. Karneth watched it all in silence. Then he turned to Sarah. In my 1,000 years of life, he said quietly, I have never seen anything like this. Your people ran toward danger, not away from it. They volunteered to risk death for others. That young man crawled through flooded tunnels alone, terrified, because strangers needed help. That's humanity, Sarah said simply. Yes, Karneth agreed, and perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs. The fourth day brought an unexpected request from Karneth. Sarah found him in the memorial garden again, sitting quietly beside the same elderly man who had been there before. They seemed to have formed an unlikely friendship. the ancient dragon and the grieving widower sharing comfortable silence. "Commander Chen," Cairneth said when he noticed her. "I wish to speak with the council, but first, I want you to show me one more thing." "What's that?" Sarah asked. "Your failures," Cairneth said bluntly. "I have seen your children, your volunteers, your heroes. Now show me where humanity falls short. Show me your conflicts, your mistakes, your darkness. The council will ask, and I must answer truthfully." Sarah took a deep breath. She had known this moment would come. "Follow me." She led him to the station's mediation center, where two families sat on opposite sides of a table, anger radiating from both groups. A mediator named Hassan worked patiently between them. "The Kowalski and Zhang families," Sarah explained quietly. "They've been fighting for 3 months. Property dispute that escalated. They've said terrible things to each other, spread rumors, tried to turn other families against each other. It's gotten ugly." Cairneth watched as Hassan spoke with each family, trying to find common ground. The Kowalskis blamed the Zhangs for damage to their living quarters. The Zhangs accused the Kowalskis of deliberately making false reports. Voices rose, accusations flew, old wounds were reopened. "Your kind fights among yourselves," Cairneth observed. "Yes," Sarah admitted. "We're not perfect. We get angry, hold grudges, make mistakes. Sometimes we hurt each other, even when we don't mean to." They watched for another hour as Hassan worked tirelessly. Slowly, painfully, he helped each family understand the other's perspective. The Kowalskis hadn't realized their repairs had caused drainage problems. The Zhangs hadn't meant for their complaint to escalate so severely. Both families were scared, defensive, protecting what little they had. Finally, gradually, the anger began to crack. Mrs. Kowalski started crying, apologizing. Mr. Zhang admitted he had overreacted. The families didn't hug or immediately become friends, but they agreed to try, to work together to fix the problems, to stop spreading anger. "They reconciled," Cairneth said, surprised. "They're trying to," Sarah corrected. "It won't be easy. Trust takes time to rebuild, but Hassan will keep working with them, and the community will support them both. We don't abandon people because they made mistakes." Next, Sarah took Cairneth to the station's small detention area. Only 3 cells, rarely used, but currently one held a man named Derek Simmons. He sat on the bunk, head in his hands, picture of misery. "What did he do?" Cairneth asked. "Stole medical supplies," Sarah said. "Valuable antibiotics, pain medication. Was going to sell them on the black market. We caught him before he could." "What will happen to him?" "That depends," Sarah said, then entered the cell area. "Derek, you have a visitor." The man looked up, eyes red from crying. When he saw Cairneth, fear flashed across his face, but he didn't run. "Ambassador Cairneth is observing human society," Sarah explained. "Would you tell him why you stole the medicine?" Derek laughed bitterly. "Why not? Everyone else knows." He looked at Cairneth. "My daughter has a disease, rare, expensive to treat. I work 3 jobs but can't afford the medicine she needs. I watched her suffer every day, crying from pain, so I stole. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't watch her hurt anymore." "Your justice system will punish him?" Cairneth asked Sarah. "Yes and no," Sarah said. "Derek, tell him the rest." Derek wiped his eyes. "When they arrested me, Dr. Okoye found out why I did it. He started a community fund for my daughter's treatment. In 2 days, the station raised enough money to cover her medicine for a year. Now they're talking about starting a medical assistance program so no one else has to choose between morality and their child's pain." "But you still sit in this cell," Cairneth pointed out. "Because I still broke the law," Derek said. "I'll serve my time, do community service, make it right, but my daughter will be okay. And maybe because of my mistake, other families won't face the same impossible choice." Cairneth was silent as they left the detention area. Sarah led him to one final location, the station's data archive, where records of everything were stored. She pulled up files, showing him the unvarnished truth. Crime statistics, reports of domestic disputes, records of resource conflicts, instances of prejudice and discrimination. "We've had people refuse to live near families from different Earth cultures," Sarah said. We've had parents complain about their children being taught by teachers they considered too different. We've had workers demand higher pay while others starved. We've had violence, theft, betrayal. Yet your station still functions, Karnath observed. Because for every person who chooses selfishness, 10 choose compassion, Sarah said. For every conflict, we have people like Hassan working toward peace. For every Derek who makes a desperate mistake, we have communities that respond with understanding rather than pure punishment. We're not perfect, Ambassador. We never claim to be. No, Karnath agreed. But you try. That young man Chen Li, risking his life in the flooded tunnels, he was terrified. I heard it in his voice. Yet he went anyway. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared, Sarah said. It means being scared and doing what's right anyway. Karnath turned to face her fully. I have traveled to many worlds, observed many species. Most hide their flaws, pretend perfection, show only strength. You showed me crying, children, grieving, widows, families fighting, criminals in cells. Why? Because that's the real test, Sarah said simply. Anyone can look good on their best day. Character shows in how you handle your worst days. Humanity isn't great because we're perfect. We're great because we keep trying to be better, even when it's hard, even when we fail. The Dragon Ambassador nodded slowly. Tomorrow I make my report to the Council. Tonight I must think carefully about what I have witnessed. Will you tell us what you've decided? Sarah asked. Tomorrow, Karnath repeated. But Commander Chen, whatever I decide, know this. Your kind has taught me things I had forgotten in my 1,000 years of life. The 5th day arrived with unusual stillness on the station. Word had spread that Karnath would make his report to the Galactic Council, and everyone knew what hung in the balance. Access to advanced medicine, faster ships, protection from hostile species, membership in a community of civilizations that spanned the galaxy, or rejection, isolation, humanity left to struggle alone among the stars. Sarah barely slept. She stood in her office before dawn, watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance, wondering if she had done enough, shown enough, said the right things. The weight of representing her entire species pressed down on her shoulders. A knock at her door broke her thoughts. Karnath entered without waiting for permission, but his manner seemed different, less formal, more like a friend visiting than an ambassador conducting business. I wanted to speak with you before I address the council, he said. There are things you should understand about what I will tell them. Sarah gestured to a chair, then remembered it wouldn't hold his weight. Instead, they both stood by the viewport, looking at Earth together. The Galactic Council has existed for 50,000 years, Karnath began. In that time, we have welcomed 347 species into membership. We have also rejected twice that many. The rejected species usually share certain qualities: aggression without wisdom, technology without ethics, ambition without compassion. And which category do humans fall into? Sarah asked quietly. Neither, Karnath said. That's what makes this difficult. Your species doesn't fit our normal patterns. You're technologically primitive by our standards. Your lifespans are painfully short. You're fragile, emotional, prone to conflict among yourselves. By every logical measure, humanity should be rejected. Sarah felt her heart sink. Then why did you spend 4 days observing us? Because the council has grown old and comfortable, Karnath said. We accept species that already resemble us, long-lived, peaceful, stable. We've forgotten what it means to struggle, to fight for survival, to face mortality every day and choose to keep trying anyway. We've forgotten the value of what you showed me. He turned to face her fully. That young engineer crawling through flooded tunnels, terrified but determined. Those children asking me about my offspring without fear. Mrs. Yamamoto bringing soup to rescue workers because warm food helps scared people. Derek Simmons stealing medicine for his daughter and your community, responding with fundraising instead of pure punishment. These moments revealed something we've lost. What? Sarah asked. The understanding that weakness and strength are not opposites, Karnath said. Your fragility makes you cherish life. Your short years make you value every moment. Your mortality makes you brave. because you know time is precious, and some things are worth dying for. The Drakari live for thousands of years. We've become cautious. We calculate, we plan, we avoid risk because we have so much time to lose. Sarah didn't know what to say. Karnith continued, his voice growing stronger. When I asked that grieving man in the memorial garden if remembering his wife helped, he said, "Some days yes, some days no, but I won't stop coming." That's humanity. You keep trying even when it hurts, even when there's no guarantee of success. You run toward danger to save strangers. You teach children to argue with authority. You show mercy to those who make desperate mistakes. You turn your failures into lessons and your pain into compassion. Ambassador, Sarah said carefully, are you saying? I'm saying the council needs to hear this, Karnith interrupted, but I want your permission first. I could file a simple report. Humanity shows potential. Recommend provisional membership. Safe, diplomatic, likely to be accepted without controversy. Or, I can tell them everything I've seen, everything I've felt, and argue that humanity doesn't just deserve membership. You could teach us to remember what we've forgotten about, what makes life worth living. The second option sounds riskier, Sarah observed. Much riskier, Karnith agreed. Some council members will resist. They'll argue your emotions make you unstable, your conflicts make you dangerous, your short lives make you poor long-term partners. They'll want to wait another 1,000 years, observe you further, see if you develop in more predictable ways. Then why take that risk? Sarah asked. Karnith picked up one of the drawings from the school children, now carefully preserved in a protective sleeve. A child's crayon drawing of a dragon and a human holding hands under a yellow sun. Because in 4 days, your kind taught me more about the value of life than I learned in 1,000 years of comfortable existence, he said softly. Because when I sat with that grieving man, I remembered my own mate who died 700 years ago and realized I had stopped visiting her memorial because it hurt too much. Because Chen Li's fear in those tunnels reminded me that courage means nothing without something worth being brave for. He looked at Sarah with those ancient golden eyes. Because the galaxy has become stagnant and safe and a little bit dead, we need the reminder that life is precious, fragile, worth fighting for. We need humanity's fire, even if it burns unpredictably. So I'm asking, do I have your permission to tell the council the truth, with all the risks that entails? Sarah thought about the children in the classroom, the volunteers in the kitchen, Chen Li in the flooded tunnels, Derek Simmons choosing his daughter over his freedom, Hassan working to heal feuding families. She thought about all the imperfect, struggling, magnificent humans trying their best every single day. Tell them the truth, she said firmly. All of it. We're not perfect, but we're real. If the council wants us, they get the actual humanity, not some diplomatic version. If they reject us for being genuinely ourselves, then maybe we're better off finding our own way. Karnith smiled, really smiled, for the first time since arriving. Spoken like a true human. Very well, I'll make the call now. The council should hear this while my conviction is strong. He activated his communication device, and a holographic display filled the room. Hundreds of faces appeared, species Sarah had never seen. Some beautiful, some strange, all ancient and powerful. The Galactic Council, assembled to judge humanity. Karnith straightened to his full impressive height. Council members, I have completed my observation of humanity. I have much to tell you. Sarah held her breath as he began to speak, telling them everything, the successes and failures, the beauty and ugliness, the hope and fear. Telling them about the real humanity, in all its complicated, struggling, magnificent truth.